So welcome everyone to today's webinar. This is Smarter Grant Prospecting using GrantStation plus AI tools to streamline your grant strategy. My name is David Gates, and I'm the Senior Director of Online Education here at GrantStation. And today I'll be presenting alongside Alice Ruhnke. And during today's webinar, we're going to show you how to harness the combined power of GrantStation's funder database plus AI tools to streamline your prospect research and outreach efforts. Alice is the President of Education and Outreach here at GrantStation, and she's going to lead us off. So please welcome Alice Ruhnke.
Well, thank you, David, and thank you all for being here on this hard to adjust to day after a holiday Tuesday that feels like a Monday. Just wanted to kind of start with kind of showing you the roadmap of what we're going to be doing today. We're going to start by kind of providing that baseline information on best practices around building a grant strategy, and then also best practices around using AI to help you in your grant development work. And we're going to go step by step through a process of planning your projects and then using GrantStation. David's going to do some demonstrations to show you how to use AI in your research and GrantStation tools as well, and how these different tools can work together to help you analyze and prioritize funders and find those best funders for your organization. And then at the end of the hour, we'll talk about some tips about writing grants using AI and kind of moving from that prospecting right into the grant writing process. So we're going to start with our introduction. And it always has just a little bit of a lag. Here are the 4 steps that we're going to talk through in more detail. Kind of want to show you the lay of the land first, in how do we go from, there's hundreds of thousands of funding opportunities out there. And how do we go from that entire universe into what funders are on our calendars and what funding applications we're going to apply to in the next, 12 months, 6 to 12 months, or whatever time period you're kind of looking at. And so we have a process of first planning your process and kind of thinking through your projects. The second step would be then to research and find those funders based on those terms that you came up with in the planning stage. Once you've found those funders, it's time to do that research and dig into finding out more about the funder to determine if this funding opportunity is going to be a good return on your investment as an organization. And so that kind of at the end of the process, you have this list of your best prospects for your organization at this time. So you're really investing your scarce time and resources where it's going to make the biggest impact. And then we'll talk more about using different AI tools to draft those proposals. So
I'm going to hop over and talk about some of the best practices.
Did I? No, I think I skipped a slide though, didn't I? Here, I did. Oh, no, I didn't. Okay.
Nope, we're good. Yeah.
No, okay. Yeah, you're right. Sorry. Okay.
Cool. And just a reminder, some people Alice, are you getting any feedback when you're hearing me?
No.
Okay, because some people were mentioning in the chat that they're getting feedback. I'm not getting feedback from Alice. Sometimes Zoom opens up in multiple places in your browser and in your application. So if you are getting any feedback, please just double check that it's not open in 2 places because that is happening with some people. Okay, but we're going to talk about the AI best practices. So first off, one of the most important things we recommend when using AI is providing source material. And this is really important because providing background information about your organization is just going to help you generate more accurate, reliable, and tailored responses. And it really reduces the risk of misinformation. So one of many people's well-founded fears with AI is that it hallucinates. It makes things up. And it does this because it needs to fill in the answers. But if you give a little bit of background information, it can streamline this. It's going to give you a lot more accurate answers. So how can you do this? There are a couple different ways. You could upload key documents. So things like grant proposals, annual reports, programs descriptions. We often recommend a comprehensive grant template is one of the most effective ways to go about it, because it's just going to give a lot of information about your organization in one place. You could also provide website links. You could direct AI to specific web pages. If you have a programs page that has accurate information about your organization, it can pull language directly from there. We recommend doing this quite frequently. So if you need responses that align with your organization's missions, programs, and languages, or if you're concerned about the AI hallucinating, please upload source material. We'll look at exactly how you do that here in a moment. If you're just brainstorming, sometimes you might not need to do that. But throughout today's lesson, we're going to look at uploading source material quite frequently. So just wanted to provide a bit of background about that. But then Alice is going to talk through step number 1, which is plan.
Yeah. So the first step in our process, like we've already mentioned, is to plan. I think that there's often a tendency, at least like on my part, to just start jumping into the research and start, doing the search and finding those funders. But we always recommend that you really take a little bit of time, a pause to really think through your projects and think through your the work that you do through a variety of lenses. And by looking at your projects through different angles, you're going to be able to find more funders. So a couple of, an example of this would be if you do a tutoring program for foster youth, a traditional, search term would be to look under education. Yes, I would still do that. But there's also, when looking at at those projects, other opportunities where people who want to support youth, or child welfare, or efforts to strengthen families. And as we look at our projects through different lenses, then we see new pathways to funding opportunities, new funders who like to fund, let's say, to a target population versus a funder who likes to fund to a geographic area. So there's lots of different ways to look. And we're going to talk about those and show us some tools as to how you can kind of create those different lenses in your projects and programs.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about using GrantStation and AI to find these search terms. So GrantStation has over 200 different search terms that you can use to tailor your searches. So these include terms that are broad, things like health and wellness general, and others that are a lot more specific, things like STEM education. This can be a really good way to think through your project because some funders are hyper specific about what they fund. They fund STEM education in Houston. Others are much more broad about what they're doing. They're funding, health and wellness or education projects throughout Minnesota or throughout Wisconsin. Both funders could potentially be a fit for specific programs or projects, but you want to think through and make sure you're finding both when you are doing your research. A common mistake is to focus on the most obvious search term and overlook some that might be relevant to you. What AI can help you actually do is review your project through a variety of different lenses. So this can save time and make your research more effective by giving you another set of eyes to look through your project, help you view it through those different lenses. Now, there are a couple of different ways that you can do it. So option number 1 is you can test GrantStation's custom search term GPT. This is free, but it does require a ChatGPT account. And this is the prompt that you can use. We're going to go look at this right now here in a moment. But essentially what this tool does is it has GrantStation's search terms loaded into it with an explanation of each search term. Then it's going to take information about your organization and help you identify the most relevant search terms. This is a free tool that you can use. It's the search term GPT. I'm going to drop a link to it in the chat right now, but you'll also get it when you get the slides. Option number 2 is use GrantStation's Help Me Search AI Assistant. This does require a GrantStation membership, but it kind of does exactly what the search term GPT does, but it does it for GrantStation members. So we're going to look at both of these options just to kind of give you a better idea of how this could work. So I'm going to jump over to ChatGPT. And today we'll spend most of our time in ChatGPT. We often do use Claude a lot. You could use Claude for very similar things as well. But what I am going to do is I am going to enter in this prompt. Please review my organization's programs and identify relevant GrantStation search term that aligns with our work. And then here is the completed project planning framework that I attached. And this is our comprehensive grant template. So this is the source material. So once I press enter, what it's going to do is it's going to read through my comprehensive grant template. It's going to look at the GrantStation search terms that are loaded into the tool, and then it's going to match those for us. So we'll let it work for a second. I do see a question from Laura. Laura, we use Copilot and we have GrantStation. Do we need a ChatGPT account as well? To use this tool, Laura, you would. To use the actual tool on GrantStation, you can just use your GrantStation account. So here, this project, sorry to give you a little bit of background, is a tutoring project for after-school youth. We have the obvious search terms, things like after-school or out-of-school programs, literacy, mentoring, at-risk youth, children and youth. These are good search terms for us. But then we also have other components of our work, including a healthy eating and nutrition program, a one where it's a smoking cessation program, so substance use disorder, health and wellness general. We have a school garden. So it's finding just a wide variety of search terms that could be aligned with our work. Any thoughts with this, Alice?
I like how they kind of broken these up into the different categories. And then also, I think that again, you're seeing those obvious ones and then below some alternative ones. Where I think, there's the alternative angles here. Again, when we're looking at things like, rural health issues or, things that, it is a rural community, but you wouldn't maybe just automatically think, oh, I should search under rural development type things. Or when you look at economic development and community development, a lot of times our projects, even though that might not be the first, area that we're working on, that it does contribute to those things. So by really opening up and expanding through, again, looking at things through a variety of lenses, it really helps us to really find more potential funders than if we were just, again, being like more in that traditional range of looking at education because it's a tutoring program. There's
Yeah.
lots of different things that you can go under and look for.
Exactly. So that's one way you can use a tool such as ChatGPT to help you kind of think through your projects. But you can actually do the same thing on GrantStation. So I'm going to jump over here to GrantStation. Just as a reference for those of you who aren't GrantStation members, if you want to look through our search terms, it is public. You can go to the search terms tab. And you could read through all of the different search terms that GrantStation has. So I'm going to actually drop this in the chat. You can read through the 200 different search terms, see exactly what might apply to your project. But we actually have a tool built into GrantStation that's going to essentially use a little bit of AI to help you find the right search terms for your project. So all I do is go to Find Grantmakers, US Charitable, and then I click this Help Me Search button. And for this one, I'm going to say that I am in California. And I just work through the different prompts. And then we just have a short overview of our work. So for this one, I found a nonprofit in California that trains shelter dogs to be service animals and partners them with veterans to help improve mental health outcomes. And this is a real nonprofit called Shelter to Soldier. So you can drop in their URL as well. So you can drop in your URL. And it's just going to scan kind of the general data of the URL, things that Google searches through when they're actually categorizing it. And then if I just click Get Terms, it is going to then match those keywords with the various search terms within GrantStation's database. It does sometimes take a few moments to come up. It's doing this kind of assisted search. This is one feature of GrantStation that you can use. Tomorrow, we actually have a full kind of demo of GrantStation, a guide to GrantStation. So if you're considering a GrantStation membership and you want to see all about the database, all about these tools, how they connect, you can join that tomorrow for free to learn a little bit more about what we do. All right, so then we see, like we did before in the other tool, we have the primary search terms. And if you go to this I, it gives you a justification. So animal-assisted therapy and service dogs, that's obviously a good fit for us. Veterans and mental health or military affairs, that's great. Mental health, that would be useful. Animal welfare. So it gives us a little bit of some background. And then we have secondary terms that could potentially be useful as well. I see a question from Laura. So anyone can use the help me search without the ChatGPT. So you can not use the help me search. This is just for GrantStation members. So people who have access to GrantStation can use the help me search, Laura. So just wanted to clear that up for you. So these are the search terms that I would potentially use. If I actually wanted to do a search, I would click Find Funders, and then it's going to show me all of these different results. So if we get rid of the national one, about 600 different funders in California. So lots of funders to potentially go through. But that's just kind of a little bit of overview of how you can get started with this first step in your research project, which is just planning, finding the relevant search terms as you are using a tool like GrantStation. All right, so we're going to jump back to these slides and we're going to move on to the research.
All right. So now we are, looking for those funders. David, showed you how you can just click right on GrantStation to find that. But what you're doing on this second step, after you've done that planning and you've thought through your projects and you have a variety of search terms and you're looking at everything from a variety of angles, you want to come up with a list of leads, if you will, to find all those funders that are aligned with the work that you do. At this point, we're not screening out leads, we're just searching for funders and looking at that kind of first glance at the funder and seeing if we are aligned with them. There's going to be a next step where we do more in-depth research, but this part is really that first kind of casting your net out into finding the funders. So there's different things that would make something a good lead. Obviously you want that alignment in the geographic area. If a funder funds your particular city or an entire state or across the nation, looking at that alignment, always having that overlap in mission to make sure that your organization and this funder really have a similar, mission. Are they accepting those applications? So a lot of times, if you use kind of the more general search kind of features that you might find just on the internet or things like that, not every funder is accepting applications. Within GrantStation's database, the funders that will come up on our list are all accepting applications. So again, you can sometimes find funders and then it's really disappointing that, but they don't accept funding from organizations that they haven't pre-selected. So, again, those funders that actually accept are good leads and also that you have the staffing, the time, all that sort of thing to actually put together a competitive application. Another thing that would really, at that first glance is looking at the grant cycles. You might need funding by a certain time and this funder, would fit your timing or it wouldn't. So that first glance at the funding cycle. And then just also, the organization, some funders like to give specifically for direct service or project support. Some funders like to give to more general operating support. Some funders fund things like capacity building or capital campaigns. So also looking within their giving priorities as to like how they like to give. These are the things that you're going to look for. Those that, again, don't have that mission alignment or your area of interest don't overlap with their areas of interest, then you would just immediately remove them from your list. But at that first glance, looking at these different things can really, will be your first step in the process. And so David's going to demonstrate a little bit of the tools to do that.
Perfect. So yeah, you can combine different tools when you're trying to find these potential funding leads. You can use AI tools for a quick overview of the funding landscape. Something like asking a chatbot, can you identify family foundations that support youth development in West Virginia? There are some pros and cons of doing this. Pros, first off, it is much better than Google at kind of understanding, and I say understanding in quotes, intent or nuance in your mission and programs. So if you're doing a Google search and you said, youth foundation or youth development foundations in West Virginia, it's only going to bring up foundations who specifically have those keywords. And that's how the Google search works. When you are, using a chatbot for this, it understands there's a little bit more leeway in this. It has a little bit more intent. There's a little bit more flexibility in the language, so it can often find more relevant funders for you. The cons of this is the results are often going to be the funders with the largest online presence. So the nature of these chatbots is they're trained on publicly available content. Things like websites, news articles, media presence, those types of things. So the biggest funders, the ones who are getting media coverage, the ones who are, having lots of press releases, who have a large online following, are the ones that are going to be the most obvious matches within these database. So suggestions are drawn from those patterns, not necessarily live, up-to-date information. But you can use a grant database like GrantStation to run more structured searches. When you're using a database like GrantStation, you're systematically going through those various keywords that you found in step number one. You're saving the top leads for the next step when you're actually going to dig into these funders a little bit more. And then you can also find some detailed funder info right away after doing a search using a chatbot. Okay, so let's do a quick demo here. So let's jump back to ChatGPT. And actually, we're going to use Claude for this one, just to kind of change things up a little bit. As you can see, Claude looks almost exactly like ChatGPT. If you are wondering which one to use, it really is up to you. A lot of these chatbots are very, very similar in terms of what you are going to get. But if I wanted to use Claude to help me with my funder research, maybe I'd say, can you identify family foundations that support youth development in West Virginia? It is going to do a little bit of web research. And it's going to find a list of family foundations that support the youth development in West Virginia. So here we have the Mulhan Family Charitable Foundation, the Robert and Frances Cheney Foundation. You'll see some links. The Claude Worthington Benedict Foundation, Daywood. So Alice, you're pretty familiar with the West Virginia landscape. What do you see here? Oh, you're on mute, Alice.
I usually don't do that. Thought my dog might bark. This really does have some good foundations in here. Some of them are very small, however, that just fund, kind of smaller areas. Like you see the Cheney Family Foundation just serves one county. whereas the Benetton Foundation funds, the entire state. So it did narrow in, but some of these wouldn't necessarily be relevant to everything, that into your geographic area. And then if you go down just a little bit, I had just down on the page, yeah. And then a couple of other things. It also didn't quite pick up that, like the Parkersburg Area Community Foundation isn't a family foundation, it's a community foundation. So it got a little confused with because it does serve youth and family services. It must have, got a little confused in that. So again, it can get you started, but this isn't by any stretch of the imagination a comprehensive list of the family foundations in West Virginia, but it can get you started to be doing some of that research.
Yep. So you can use an AI tool, and then you can also use a tool like GrantStation. So let's jump over to GrantStation. Once again, this will be in depth tomorrow if you want to join the guide to GrantStation. But if you are using GrantStation to find grant makers, what I would do is I first select the state I'm working in. So I'm going to go with West Virginia, and then I can select a few of the keywords. So maybe in step number 1, I found a few different keywords. So under areas of interest, maybe in education, maybe I have after school and out of school education, maybe in social services, I have at-risk youth, and maybe I believe it's in community and economic development. I have rural affairs because that's going to be the rural ones. And then I add in some target populations like children and youth, and I do a quick search. Once again, this is a very brief overview of how to use GrantStation. So if you want to see it in depth, please join tomorrow. But then we have 108 different matches. So this is what you will see within a database like GrantStation. We have all the community ones, and it tells you exactly where you're matching, and then you can see the geographic scope of these funders. We have the Appalachian Community Fund. And we go through some of these. You would certainly want to scroll. If you want to view a profile, so this is one that ChatGPT suggested, the Claude Worthington Benetton Foundation. Like Al said, this is one of the biggest funders in West Virginia. When you get to a profile like GrantStation, you can read in-depth overview of this. I do want to just take note, we're going to look at this text here in a moment, but this is the text I'm going to use slightly just to see how good of a fit it is. But then you can see things like grants awarded, grant stats, and some of the key leaders. We also have links to the 990s and grants awarded page. That's something we're going to talk a little bit about here later. But as you can see, this profile gives you a lot to work with to be able to analyze the potential fit, which is going to be the next step in the process, which is step number 3. And Alice is going to walk us through that. So I'm going to jump back here and let you talk through the next one, Alice.
Yeah. So now that you've identified those funders, then like David said, now you want to start digging into more information about the funder to find those best opportunities for your organization. So again, there's lots of different areas that you can look at when David was showing you the profile. But again, what you're looking at is which funding opportunities are going to be the best for your organization. And you can set kind of any priority that you want. Like you can have a list of A funders and B funders and C funders. You can kind of make that, work for your organization of those that, you fit in a lot of different areas. You fit geographically, you fit mission based, you fit target population. Whereas maybe a weak one would be something where maybe you fit the geographic area, but you've never served that target population before or something. So that would be one that you wouldn't prioritize as a really high one. So some of the things that you're going to be looking at now that you have this first list is who they've given to in the past. And that's a real great predictor of, kind of how they've given, who they've given to. Again, we'll show you how you can look at the different profiles and see this information, but it's always, if they funded other, youth development programs like yours, or universities, or, K through 12 programs, you can kind of get that idea. Yeah, they fund, organizations like mine. Looking and really analyzing how much they've given, looking at kind of their giving trends. Are they giving more? Are they giving less? What's their average grant? What's their grant range? Those sorts of things, because you're also wanting to decide at this point, if you need, $1.6 million. Probably a funder who only gives out $2,000 is not a funder that you're going to put on your list, because that they're just not giving at the range that you need. Also looking at their application process, looking at what you need to complete the application. What do you already have on hand? What will you need to create? And so, having those questions, asking those questions as you're researching the funder. And then, kind of, can you build that relationship with the funder? Some funders make it very, very difficult, if not impossible, to build a relationship with them. But others, there's opportunities to do so. And so, building those relationships always increases your chance of success. So again, a funder that you either have a relationship with or can build one would be ones that you would put kind of stronger on your list. So this is that time to really do that research and find out this information. How you kind of rank them, what's an A funder, what's a B funder, what's a C funder. It's different for every organization. There's no one size fits all. But as you're going through, you're going to be identifying, what's the most important things to you. Is it that relationship that you have? Is it really working on, when you have time to complete your applications? What are the different, situations around, what you have going on versus what the funder has going on, and things like that. So, an A funder to one organization would be a B funder to another. But, an A funder might be something where, you have that really strong mission fit. And you have, it's a detailed application. It's going to be some work, but you're ready to do it. You have the staffing ready to do it. Perhaps a moderate fit with that funder, but it's a quick application that you can just turn around really fast. So you decide, okay, that's a funder I'm going to put on my A list. You have that relationship, or an insider connection. That could be something that you would rank that higher. Looking at local funders first. That's always the best idea, as if you're just starting, that you want to really build those local relationships first. Look at your community foundations, look at your local family foundations, and build kind of from the center of your project on out. Because those larger funders that fund regionally or nationally, they're going to want to see that you have that track record. And so you have to usually build that track record starting locally. Or potentially, an A funder might be to you, a competitive federal or state grant that's going to have a large amount of money that's going to make a big difference in your organization, and you really feel compelled to, move forward with that. So these are all decisions that you kind of make, knowing your own organization, your capacity, and your ability to, complete the applications and work with the funder. So David's going to show us now, again, how to do some of that analyzing using GrantStation and AI tools.
Yes. You can use the GrantStation profiles for the detailed summary of their priorities, their giving histories, links to 990s. So kind of what we just looked at with the Claude Benedum Foundation. It had the detailed overview of the foundation. It had the summary of what they're giving. We could see their giving history, and it had links to 990s as well. So you can find all of that information on a GrantStation profile. It's going to be one of the best places to get started with your secondary research. So it's a really important step in this overall process. You're going to streamline it a lot by starting with a GrantStation profile. But then you can use AI to, for example, analyze info on a GrantStation profile. You could also summarize or interact with a 990. You can analyze a request for proposal as well. So there's lots of different ways that you can start to use these tools to see, is this funder a good fit? Maybe it can give some of the pros and cons of these different funders so that you can actually decide, which ones are those A tiers, which ones are those B tiers, which ones are those C tiers. So let's jump back to ChatGPT and look at this in action. Okay, so I'm going to go to ChatGPT. I am going to first add my source material. So this is what I tend to do. So I have a completed project planning framework. So this is attached here. Once again, this is a comprehensive grant template. We can share an example of this so that you can see what exactly it will do. And what I am going to say is to review the funder profile in the next message and the attached case for support. After reviewing, do you think this funder is a good fit? Provide justification along with ways we could strengthen the fit. I am actually using the grant template, so I'm going to upload this a little bit. Did this? Okay. So I'm going to enter this, and then it is going to ask me for the funder profile. And I am just going to copy and paste that information directly from GrantStation. So this is that funder profile. It is going to analyze that. And it is going to say it's, it's a strong fit to a very strong fit. Okay. So it gave us, things like education, health and consumer services. It prioritizes expanded and extended learning opportunities. So that's a good fit for us. And then it justifies exactly why. And this might be the strongest alignment with the Benedum priority. Okay. And then it also has things like rural West Virginia, so excellent geographic fit, evidence-based education. This is a good fit. So we're a very strong fit for this fund. This would be one that we would apply for. And then also things where maybe we could improve the fit. So areas where the fit could be stronger, teacher quality or instructional innovation. We don't really have that, but maybe that is something we could look at. Any thoughts with this, Alice, as we were looking through
Yeah,
it?
no, I really like how it really aligns specifically with the Benedum Foundation and this project. And really, like saying, these things about like career readiness. In that project description that we uploaded, it didn't have anything about career readiness. But again, as you're looking at that and saying, okay, Benedum really strongly values that. Are there ways that we can, enhance that component of our project through, you can see right here, career exploration or workforce readiness and those sorts of things, which would be things that would definitely be able to fit with this organization and its projects. So it just, really does help you really compare again completely your project and what you're doing or your organization and this funder. And then, some of these you're not going to want to, just because they say, oh, Benedum strongly values this, it doesn't mean that you have to all of a sudden put in this career readiness alignment, and you might not want to, right? It doesn't mean that you have to, but there are just different ideas on ways that you can strengthen that application that in a way that is true to your mission and your programs and that sort of thing. So it really helps you think through that particular funder and your particular work. and where how you can align with them and again, start on making those relationships with them.
Absolutely. Great. Okay, so let's jump back here and we'll look at the next step. Okay.
Okay. So now that you have, okay, so you've planned and done, and then you've done your research, you found your funders, and then you've gone into the more deep research, really analyzing the funders and determining which funders are, your A funders, your B funders, your C funders. And so now it's time to kind of build that calendar for your organization. You really want to obviously put those top tier funders first, that they get the first space on your calendar, and those deadlines are really tracked, and your work plan is built around those deadlines. When you do plan ahead and look at things over the next, 6 to 12 months, it really helps you to kind of look at your organization and your staffing. Perhaps, the summertime is a great time for your organization to put together high quality proposals. Or perhaps your summer is your busiest time, and that's the least time that you can do that. So you need to work on that, say, in the springtime instead. So it really allows you to kind of think forward, think about your own staffing, your own capacity. And then after you've kind of gone through first, with your first top tiers, then you can come in and start loading in the second tier and then the third tier as it makes sense to your organization. So we do have not a grants calendar, but we have a dashboard where you can kind of track your funding. It has the deadlines, it has where you're at in the process, and it can really just help keep you aligned with all the funders that you want to go after. And you can put notes in there and kind of keep track of what you've done and what the results were you declined, were you accepted, those sorts of things. But one of the things that I would say, kind of as we're trying to combine tools right now, AI really won't help you with building a calendar, just because it's not going to know exactly how your organization is operating and what the busy times are, and when people are off on vacations and things like that. So I think kind of creating that calendar, if it's a shared calendar in your office, if it's a big physical calendar on your wall, whatever that is, um, uh, kind of doing that on the more manual side will give you better results. So now we're going to talk, so now you have a calendar of grants to apply to, and now we're going to talk a bit about using AI to draft grant, to create your drafts.
Yes. So this is kind of the final step, and this is obviously a big step once you find these ones, is actually writing your grant proposals. We do some pretty in-depth webinars just on this one, but we just wanted to kind of touch on some of the high-level things that you can do to streamline some of your grant writing. So just some overall quick tips. Once you've identified some funders, AI can quickly help you move from prospecting to drafting. There are some, high-level use cases. You can draft different grant sections, like a needs statement, your organizational background, your program description. You can edit existing content for length, tone, or funder voice. You could also review and score a draft before submission. So these are different use cases that you can use to, draft, edit, and review on your grant proposals to ensure they're as strong as possible. But one thing, really important thing to remember, AI is the assistant. You are always the author. So you are responsible for whatever you are submitting in any grant application. So you can use AI, and we recommend using it as an assistive way. So assistive AI versus, generative AI. But it can streamline that process, but make sure you are always reviewing it. Now, we have a consistent approach to AI that we recommend. One thing we often kind of notice is that people are often approaching AI closer to a Google search than its capabilities. When you use it this way, it can amplify its weaknesses, so it can have a little bit more hallucinations, and it limits its strength. We have a set of 4 Ps that we recommend going through. Just on a high level, the first one is prime. So this is setting up your tool with the right privacy settings and memory. So means looking at privacy, understanding privacy, making sure that you are only sharing secure information, and then you're also updating your tool's internal memory. So this is just that first step. It's that preparation step. Then pull. This is gathering and uploading source materials before you start. So we talked about it at the beginning, but want to reiterate it now. Using source material is the key or the most important thing that you can do to using AI effectively. It's going to streamline so many different processes. It's going to avoid hallucinations. It's going to be able to match your voice. So having that source material beforehand is really, really important. And then we prompt it. We give AI clear, specific instructions, focusing on things like its role, the context, the task you want it to do, the format you want it to come out in, and any constraints you want it to be aware of. And then proof. Proof is reading every output carefully, verifying facts, editing, making it yours. That one is non-negotiable. To talk a little bit more about the pull and prompt, so what to upload, you can upload a grant template, a well-written proposal, or a case for support. And then this is a prompt example, and we're going to actually look at this one. You are going to get these examples that you can review, but basically this prompt is going to assign a role as an experienced grant writer, some context, so review the uploaded grant template, gives a task, write a 350-word need statement, format, we want it in flowing prose, third person, and then constraints. Only use statistics from the uploaded documents. And do not use, certain language like at risk or underserved. I am going to show you exactly what this looks like now. So let's jump over to, and let's do this one in Claude. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a file here. So I'm going to add, and what I added is this completed project planning framework. So this is a comprehensive grant template. And then I put in this prompt. And what my goal here is to have it answer this question, just so you can really see it clearly. A need statement, why after school programming is critical for youth. And Lynn, oh, this is not where we are. We are in, what is the name of, yeah, the Lynn Community
Oh, in
Center.
Runfar?
Yeah.
Is it
Yes, in
Runfar?
Runfar, West Virginia. Sorry, this is a,
Make
okay.
believe.
It's
Yeah,
a make-believe one, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I have the role, the task, the format, and the constraints. And I enter this in. And it's going to write this need statement for me. So I would just update this to the exact question I want it to answer. And what it did is it read all of this. And now it is pulling this information directly from my framework. Okay, so we have, it's 12,000 residents. This is the median household income. So this is accurate data. This is exactly what I uploaded. This is the impact data that we've had. And just breaks it down in a very simple way following those directions. Of course, then I would go on, I would edit this, I would make it mine, but this gives you a really good start when you are trying to use a tool like AI. Any questions or any thoughts with this analysis?
I like how that assumed it, like verifying Runfar WV is the same as Runfar USA. Like I think in the template we might have just had it was Runfar USA. So it really is like reading the document and really understanding kind of the context of what the document is and the question that the task that David asked it to do. And yeah, I mean, it really, and the other thing is that, quite often, you hear of those hallucinations and things like that, but and not to use AI for like a need statement and things like that. But if you do use your own source material, then that's where you're asking it to pull from your information so that it's something that, again, you're going to check, and that's, and edit before you submit. But it really will pull from your own stuff, rework it, reconnect it to what this funder wants and how they want to see your work. And it really, really saves time. Kind of
Absolutely.
helps level that playing field for, I think, those small nonprofits, to kind of have that extra assistant, if you will.
Yep.
Yep.
So this is just kind of touching on AI, especially the writing with AI. We do have some live workshops that Alice and I have run recently that you can check out the recordings of, or you can access all of it and the future webinars in GrantStation's online learning academy. So if you're interested in learning more about how to use AI, get it in, check out GrantStation's online learning academy. We have a discount code for that a little bit later now as well.
Yeah,
And actually,
there
it
it
is right
is.
here. So
Yeah.
it's this slide. So if you're interested in the online learning academy, if you use the code webinar 150, it will give you $150 off. You can use that, and then you get access to all of our AI content, a year's worth of future webinars as well. Okay, so that is kind of the essential stuff there. It looks like we have a few questions that we should check out here. So let's pull some of these
Yeah.
up.
Shelby had asked about uploading she has concerns with using AI and uploading documents, and the security involved. So we get that question at every AI webinar we do. And so she has said, are there any recommendations you may have to secure our data while preventing hallucinations? And if you are using an AI tool there, and if you go into the settings of whatever you're using, you can find an option about privacy. And if you want to train the model for everyone. And so if you turn that off, then your data doesn't get stored within the system to train on any, with your data and your information that you're uploading. So look at your particular, whichever, ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, and go into your settings, and you can hit a higher privacy level. And that can help, with those concerns about uploading things, but still be very cautious. That there are things that you don't want to upload, regardless of if you have that on or off. You don't want to put client information in there, or, information about things that you really want to hold, maybe your donors or different things that you want to keep very private. So, look at that as well, but you can increase your privacy levels.
Yep. And Shelby, we have a privacy tolerance worksheet that I can share in the follow-up materials, just kind of breaking down things that you can probably share, things that you should be cautious, and things that you should never share, and kind of thinking through it with your each organization.
Yep.
Okay. Kimberly says, what if you have multiple organizations you write grants for? Should we create multiple separate GPTs for each organization and then prompt with this, or can you combine them all if you create projects for each client? Generally, Kimberly, it's best to separate clients as much as possible. So if you're using ChatGPT or if you're using Claude, having a new project for each client can be a really good feature. If you're using GrantStation, also creating a project description for each client can be really useful. It's just going to help you stay organized. Some of these tools are pretty good at understanding, if you tell them I am a consultant, it's going to understand, you're talking about different clients, but it is just going to be cleaner. It's going to be much easier for you to use. And it really doesn't take too much more effort to kind of set it up that way.
Elke asked if your organization supports other organizations across the nation. Do you feel it is productive to apply for grants that have a regional focus? And yes, it really can be. A lot of times, if you are, an organization that serves nationally, some funders, or, if a funder does fund, a state, a region, a set of counties, that sort of thing, they want to know how you're impacting their area. So, if as long as you can break down that information to demonstrate what impact the grant will have in that region, then a lot of times that opens up more funding opportunities for you because you can say, okay, I have these programs running in the Northeast. I can demonstrate how we serve the Northeast, who we served in the past, how the money will stay in that community, that sort of thing. So yeah, I think you can, as long as you can break down that information regionally, then that would be very productive to find more funders.
Great. Okay, then I see, looks like from Horace, would you recommend when the applicant is a 501c3 religious organization that is not required to file IRS Form 990, especially if funders require such?
Yeah, so if you don't have your 501c3, most of the time you are going to be required to have that in order to apply to a funder. And so uh, number one, work with the funder if you don't have it, see if you can still apply. But if the answer is no, then you can work with what's just called a fiscal sponsor. That's somebody who does have a 501c3. There's organizations that do that kind of naturally as their work. You might also just find people within your community that would, serve as that fiscal sponsor. They're a 501c3 and they would be willing to be the applicant for your project. The applicant would be that 501c3, but you could then, build a relationship with them. Then you're going to do the work, you're going to carry it out, and that sort of thing. But I would recommend that you go ahead and get that 501c3 just because it's going to open up a lot more opportunities for you.
Yep, makes sense. Then I see a lot of responses just kind of related to if funders allow the use of AI or funders are using AI to read proposals, which is a really common question that we see. First off, the answer to that would be it varies funder to funder. Some funders explicitly say, we don't want people to use AI and we want you to disclose that you didn't, in which case you shouldn't use AI and you should disclose that you didn't. We've seen other funders who say, it's okay to use AI, but we want you to disclose if you did and how you did it. And others who don't have policies that are fully developed yet. So it really does vary. There's not one size fits all between different funders. The biggest thing would be follow their guidelines. And this could be part of you analyzing a fit with a funder. If you tend to use AI and they have a very detailed application process, and they say, we don't allow people to use AI, I would say don't use AI, but maybe you don't have time to actually apply to this funder then. So that could be another way that you think about it. Any thoughts with that, Alice?
No, I agree. I mean, I think that I think the most funders are kind of on the they don't have a policy about it yet. They're learning this in live time with us. We're all learning this. This changes every day. All these sorts of things, and they didn't learn it first, and then we came along to apply for grants, right? So most of them don't have a policy. So, that's kind of what I found. But if they do, then like David said, then we recommend honesty, best policy, and ask, answer the questions that they have honestly.
And then Karen also said, do we think that funders are using AI to read proposals? There probably are some funders who are doing it, but I hope funders aren't doing that way. I hope that they would just adjust their process if they wanted, like an LOI overview of your organization, which is essentially what you could get if you are using AI to review something, that they could adjust their process and they would get the same results. Any thoughts of that, Alice?
Yeah, no, I mean, like you said, David, I don't think many are. Certainly some could. But again, I don't think that it's that used within the funding world yet.
Yeah.
So
Right. And then JD says, how much detail of a grant request should you share with your board and what should you share?
oh, well, you can share I mean, it depends on what your board wants. Mostly what they usually want is, what project are you, trying to get funding for? Who did you apply to? How much money was it for? Usually that's all that they want. Some might be so, kind of in the weeds that they'd want to read your application. I mean, it really kind of depends on the board. But usually, in my experience, you've just kind of shared the overview of the project, the amount, and the funder. And then if they wanted more information, you could provide them with the grant application.
Yep. And then Bob says, how do you approach a funder who does not accept unsolicited requests?
Yeah, so that is a really hard one, because they kind of set up their system where they maybe don't have a website or they don't have a contact information. We do have on, like I said, we don't put funders who don't accept unsolicited applications on our website, but we do have all the 990s of every funder. So if there's a funder out there that you know, that you might want to look into and start to build that relationship with them, we would have access to their 990. And so on their tax form, there's going to be some information on who their leaders are, who their board of directors are, or who their major staff people are. Finding any connection that you have between your people and their people would be, probably a first step. It can happen, that you can kind of get into their world, but I think of that as like a pretty long-term strategy, of like thinking of a couple of years, till you would, be able to kind of be in their universe. But I would just start with that 990 and just see if there's any ways to kind of get in with any of their staff or leadership in their board.
Yeah, and we've had
Yeah.
other webinars talk about that. And it's just that long time horizon, I think, is exactly right, Alice. You just got to look at it at a very long length.
Yeah.
Then Angie says, what are some ways for brand new 501c3s to get funding? Some funders ask for 3 years minimum.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Angie, I think that when you start local, that kind of like, say, with like a community foundation or a local family foundation or a United Way, usually they don't have like a minimum time of operation. And so again, they usually, kind of give out smaller grants, but you're starting to build your capacity to manage those grants. So it might be that you do have to just kind of start a little smaller, a little more local, look at businesses and corporations and things like that in your area. Usually their process is a little bit easier to get some funding. So I would, that's where I would just start very local, and then, build out to the more, larger foundations that give regionally or nationally.
Visit GrantStation to see our latest online education offerings in the form of live webinars, interactive workshops, and on-demand learning. GrantStation.com.